You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 23rd of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting live from Studio 1 here at Midori House in London. I'm Chris Cermak. Coming up on today's program, Syria sees fighting flare between the government and Kurdish forces. We'll ask what that means for the future of a nation still emerging from the dictatorship of Bashar al-Assad. Also on the show,
I think it goes to show that tech bros are pretty odd people wherever they are.
Isabel Hilton there discussing why Chinese tech billionaires are having as many as 100 babies in the United States. We'll also get a roundup of news from Switzerland, and finally,
Lapland tourism started with the day trips, and that slowly transferred to 2-night stay, the 3-night stay, 1-week stay, and repeatedly arriving back to Lapland.
Lapland, the Finnish home of Santa Claus. Our Helsinki correspondent Petri Bertsov reports. All that right here on The Briefing with me, Chris Cermak. Happy Tuesday to all of our listeners out there. Hope you're getting ready for the holidays. Just one more day to go before Christmas Eve. We're going to start our show today in Syria because Syria has experienced something of a rebirth with the fall of Bashar al-Assad, and yet the country does continue to face many challenges as well as fighting between various factions. The US struck purported Islamic State targets in Syria over the weekend. And there's also been an eruption of fighting between the Syrian government and Kurdish forces. At least 2 people were killed in the northern city of Aleppo as Turkey's foreign minister was on a state visit to the country yesterday. Well, joining me now from Istanbul is Ruth Michelson, journalist covering the Middle East and a regular Monocle contributor. Ruth, thanks very much for coming on the show in this holiday week. First of all, just bring us up to speed, if you will, on the latest in terms of who's been fighting whom here.
Right, so this is the Syrian Democratic Forces. It's a Kurdish-led coalition that control a very large chunk of northeastern Syria. But this was fighting overnight inside Aleppo, which is the largest city in Syria, the industrial center. And we're talking about 2 neighborhoods in central Aleppo where there were at least 2 civilians killed, 15 wounded, by shelling, according to Syria's state-run news agency, Sana. And we've seen since then that the Syrian Defense Ministry in Damascus has given a ceasefire order. The SDF did the same, and there's some efforts now to de-escalate. But really what this is about, in the kind of broader sense, is about Damascus and the new government in Damascus after the fall of the Assad regime, as you mentioned, about their ability to be in control of all of the country. We've seen efforts by militias in the south, in Sueda, to break away. Earlier this year, there was violence in the coastal area, which is a region that is dominated by the Alawite minority sect. And now this is this huge flare-up happening in Aleppo and in the northeast. And this is all about a previous agreement earlier this year between the head of the SDF and the new government in Damascus that was meant to see the SDF integrate into the new Syrian military. And essentially that just hasn't really happened. And so there's concerns that what remains of that agreement is going to fall apart and that this violence could now continue.
Now, Ruth, this was also happening while Turkey's foreign minister was on a visit to Syria. Turkey obviously has a stake in this, both just in Syria as a neighbor, but of course also in the Kurdish-controlled north. So was this a coincidence? Was it related in any way to Turkey's foreign minister being there?
Well, I mean, if you believe the Syrian officials, they have accused the SDF of spurring this fighting while the Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan was in the country, and essentially, showing, in their words, or also in the words of the Syrian Foreign Minister, why the SDF, he accused them of being an obstacle to Syria's achieving stability, unity, and prosperity. Hakan Fidan, when he was talking in Damascus, started talking about why it's important that they see stability in Turkey. It's not just about their neighbor. They also see the SDF as being an enemy. At the same time, Syria's international partners are quite concerned by all of this, and that includes the Americans, because there is this idea that all of this fighting gives an opportunity for an ISIS resurgence. America backed the SDF previously in the fight against ISIS in northeastern Syria. And now what we're seeing is, with all of this fighting emerging, we've seen an uptick in attacks by individuals or groups associated with ISIS in the past couple of weeks, which led to those strikes by American forces that you mentioned over the weekend.
Well, tell us more about that, sort of what the U.S. involvement is here, because as you say, or as I mentioned as well, there were these strikes over the weekend on ISIS targets, but they also have this interest in the north that is maybe different from the Syrian government, but they also want to support the Syrian government. So where does the U.S. stand here?
So, I mean, the US is trying to broker a deal between the SDF and the government in Damascus now to see the SDF integrate into the new Syrian army and security forces. And there is some ongoing disagreements about, how that's going to actually function. While that's happening, there are also concerns about the strength and integrity of those security forces. And that includes whether you have extremists, jihadists, or possibly even members of ISIS who have become part of those security forces. So there was an attack in the Syrian city of Palmyra in central Syria on US forces about 10 days ago by a member of Syria's new security forces who was accused of at least having an allegiance or possibly even a deeper connection to ISIS. And that attack left 2 American soldiers and a civilian interpreter killed, 3 others wounded. The attacker was then shot dead. As a result, we then see these American strikes that hit over 70 targets over the weekend, something that we saw the self-proclaimed Secretary of War or Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, depending on which term you want to use. He described this as a declaration of vengeance, not the beginning of a war.
Just finally, Ruth, when you describe all of that and also how you started with some of the sectarian tensions, this is a time where everyone wants to be hopeful about Syria. Do you get the impression that all of these tensions are sort of just bubbling beneath the surface?
I mean, definitely bubbling beneath the surface. I think there's pressure on the government in Damascus to try and do everything they can to basically tamp down on this, to find a way to be in control in the Northeast. The Northeast and everything that is happening with the SDF is essentially, it's the biggest test case for what happens in the south, in Sueda, on the coast with Alawite militias. And the thing is that they don't really have a lot of good options to kind of go beyond what they've done in the efforts to try and integrate the SDF into the army. But there is this sense, and especially when we hear US officials talk, or the US envoy Tom Barrack being a big example here, there is this sense that this has to be done one way or another. They have to come to some agreement. They have to find a way to get all the parts of the SDF to either integrate or to stop fighting, because the future stability of the country is at stake, and it's something that Damascus really wants. It's something that international partners want, and there aren't really a lot of other good alternatives.
Ruth Michelson in Istanbul, thank you very much for joining us. Now here's Tom Edwards with the day's other news headlines.
Thank you very much indeed, Chris. Russian missile and drone strikes have killed at least 3 people in Ukraine and struck energy facilities in the western part of the country, prompting emergency power cuts across much of the state just before the holiday season. The attacks come amid another round of US-led peace talks this week aimed at ending the war. Australia's Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has invited Israel's President Isaac Herzog for a state visit in the wake of the Bondi Beach attack on a Jewish community Hanukkah celebration. Albanese expressed shock at the attack and vowed to stamp out anti-Semitism, but he's also faced harsh criticism from Jewish groups and from Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. China has failed for a second time to recover a reusable rocket after a test launch from Dongfeng in the northwest. China's been trying to close the gap in its space race with the United States and the company SpaceX by building reusable rocket boosters that lower the costs of delivering satellites into orbit. And, Chris, finally, and you'll either like or hate this one, a new survey here in the UK finds that no less than 38% of Brits say it would be a, quote, catastrophe if they lost internet access at the Christmas holidays, leaving them bereft of ideas for how to keep themselves and their family entertained. 1 in 3 Brits told the survey, which was somewhat predictably done by an internet provider, that they expect to start Christmas Day itself with a scroll through social media, even before checking if Santa has brought them any presents. With that thoroughly dispiriting piece of news, Chris, back to you here in Studio One.
The magic is gone. Is that what this says? Although one could put a positive spin on it, Tom, perhaps, to say at the end of the day, at least it's not over half. So that does mean that a majority of people will not.
A significant majority.
Like
nearly two-thirds. Nearly
happens.
two-thirds of right-minded people can experience some classic Christmas joy with friends, family.
What do you do, Tom? I have to ask you at this point. Do you play board games or anything like that?
Because I'm frequently bored. No, I certainly won't be starting my day with a screen, Chris. Listen, people, you can stay tuned to Monocle Radio, of course, a digital service, yes, but put the screen down. Look into the eyes of your loved ones on Christmas morning, just for a second.
A brave appeal there from our head of radio. Thanks very much, Tom Edwards. It is time now for a roundup of news out of Switzerland, and for that I am joined from our Zurich studio by Monocle Radio producer and expert on all things Swiss, Desiree Bandley. And Desi, before we get even to your topics, do you have a take on this? Are you going to be scrolling through social media before Santa comes on the 25th?
Good afternoon, Chris. I have to say we're a bit, I don't know, I'm not sure how the Austrians do it, but for us, we have presents on the 24th at night.
Yes,
so there's nothing happening on the 25th, so I might as well be on my phone.
That's a very fair point. If this were a study done for us, that doesn't actually apply.
Yeah, no,
I do take that back, because we do have the same thing in Austria. We celebrate on Christmas Eve. So yeah, 25th is just a relaxing day. Speaking of, though, Austria versus Switzerland, Desi, we have done this a few times on this show before, and you've kind of gone for the jugular here, I have to say, for your choice of topics. Who does the Alps better?
Who does the Alps better? So there's an Alpine destination report that came out that the Austrians do, actually. And for the first time, they've included a few Swiss destinations. So obviously, I thought this is something I want to have a closer look at.
How kind of us to
Yeah,
include
of course. Yeah. It was basically like this. But they also said, sorry, they could only pick like 11 destinations, I think, in Switzerland. They could only pick a few. They didn't have the data for all of them. But still, I think it's an interesting study to be done. They looked at a few things. For example, they looked at supply and demand. So how busy or how full are all the beds? They looked at how expensive is it to stay, how expensive is a ski pass, and they looked at just how attractive is it in general, what are the user ratings, how many days are those holiday destinations open. So let's have a look through it, right?
Okay, give us the results.
So the results, they're obviously very detailed, and they put it in these different categories. So for example, if we're interested in places that are equally summer and winter destinations, you're at the top with Zell am See Kaprun. Now, don't ask me where that is.
Which is where part of my family is actually
is it really?
from. So yes,
yeah, well
I
done.
do know
well
exactly
done.
where that is.
Well done, Chris.
Near Salzburg.
Well
in the
done,
sort of
Chris.
Salzburg region. It's very nice.
Yeah,
I've
did
been
it.
there.
See, number one. If we look at prices, it's no surprise that we're at the top. If we look at prices to stay somewhere, Cermak number 1, St. Moritz number 2, and then you come actually with Lech. Lech Zürich is also expensive.
Yeah, I haven't made it to Lech, maybe partly for that reason.
Yeah,
I have to ask.
Don't.
I have to ask you at this point, Desi, I mean, when you describe that then in the Swiss coming on top on prices, does that mean that like when you go skiing there, do you like slum it when you go to Austria?
There are quite a few Swiss who actually go to the other side, which I didn't know. I found out that you guys have a lot of German and Dutch people going to those destinations, and we actually, for the prices, it kind of makes sense. We have a lot of either Swiss people or the ones from further abroad, so the Americans and from some other countries a bit further away, not in Europe.
That does kind of make sense, Desi. There have been some controversies over the past. I believe even the far-right Freedom Party got involved in Austria and was like, out with the Dutch.
Out with the Dutch, you don't want them. Okay, look, so obviously prices we win. I mean, like we have the most expensive ones, ski passes as well, Cermak, St. Moritz, Davos, you know where to be seen. Highest one, altitude, we also win, but pit stall is close.
Fair enough. You just about win on the highest. We'll give you that.
We just about win. You win, though, on kilometers that you can ski. And what else? You also win on online, on people rating it online, user ratings. Surfhouse Fizz Ladis has the best ratings.
Best online ratings?
Yeah,
I will take
online,
that.
I mean, that's something.
That was very diplomatically put of you, I have to say, Desi. It was basically we're both winners. Is that how we're going to end the year?
I think so. It's the end of the year. Next year we prepare again to
do battle.
To a fight. Yeah.
I look forward to that, Desi. Let's move on to just a couple of other stories that you brought us. It's a sad day there for the free newspaper 20 Minuten.
It is a sad day. So basically this newspaper, we all know it doesn't really matter which tram or bus stop you go to. You have these blue boxes where 20 Minuten, 20 minutes, used to be in for the last 26 years. And today is the last time that they have the printed version. It was interesting because that's one of the newspapers that, obviously, because it was free, younger people also used to read it. So they had quite short articles to just give you an overview of what's happening in the world. And they do say they don't stop it because they lost readership, but they can't put enough publishing on it. So no one wants to sponsor them anymore, which makes it too expensive to print, to have it actually printed. So today, even though it's the last day that you can read it physically, they will continue with an online version and an application, but still something that's going to miss, like commuters will miss for sure.
Absolutely. I mean, is this part of a broader trend? Do you get the sense, Desi, because I do feel like in some of the German-speaking countries, I remember in Germany too, there are still more people who want the actual print newspaper. Is that the case in Switzerland, or is everyone moving online?
I think it depends a bit. I think obviously the problem was with when 20 minutes became big, not everyone used to have the phone right there to look at the news. So I think that's one of the biggest problems for them. But then you do still have the stronger newspapers that still rely and still have people who want to read them, especially on a Sunday morning.
Especially on a Sunday morning. Well, finally, Desi, I love this story that you brought for us, this final one, about a missing gin ball. 230 liters of gin was lost and has now been found.
It was really lost. So in 2022, there's a Swiss catering company who apparently they've done this before. I didn't know. They fill a bowl. It's like a metallic sphere, I would say. They fill that with gin, 230 liters of gin, and they let it go down in the Bodensee, so in the Lake of Constance, saying it will give it a special flavor. And the idea is to leave it there for 100 days, right? So they did that, went back, couldn't find it. They thought it must have been stolen, clearly, but then there were the people asking, how can you steal something that's so big and like it's on the ground? It's not like ready to go. But anyways, there was someone who didn't give up looking for it, and they finally found it now, nearly 3 years later, and could give it back to the guys who actually put it there.
Will they actually give it back to the guys? I mean, I have to say, if you've done this and found 230 liters of gin in a metallic sphere at the bottom of the lake, aren't you going to keep it for yourself?
No, they do, and there's actually quite a cute picture that I saw online of the guy who found it in front of it, because he said it was quite an operation. He used sonar equipment and a diving robot to find this thing. So for him, I think it's more a joy than that he found it than the actual value of what's inside.
I don't know if this is a weird segue, Desiree, but I wonder if that person should be joining the search for MH370, which will start again next year. We need all the help we can get for these things.
He's good. He seems good.
Desiree Bandley, producer at Monocle's Zurich studio. Thank you very much for joining us. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. You are back with The Briefing. I'm Chris Cermak. Now, the US and China have had an on-again, off-again relationship through much of this year. And one of the more curious stories of the last few weeks is a report that Chinese tech billionaires are having babies born in the United States through surrogacy. It is a story that is hard to believe, but to get more details on this, I was joined earlier by Isabel Hilton, founder of China Dialogue. Let's hear her explanation of this bizarre trend.
It is my very strong candidate for the weirdest China story of 2025. And I think it goes to show that tech bros are pretty odd people wherever they are. So we have Elon Musk, who his fathered, 14 children? And, it seems to matter to him, on he goes. And so the Chinese have outcompeted Elon Musk. So there are these extraordinary tech entrepreneurs, very rich, who have 100 children, have admitted to having 100 children born in the United States by surrogacy. And this was all discovered when over a nationality hearing in a court in the United States, where the judge noticed that the same father had 12 previous nationality hearings. And she got a bit suspicious and denied the request. And then the Wall Street Journal started investigating and uncovered this quite extraordinary phenomenon. So these are very rich people. One wants 100 sons to take over his business, 100 fine sons. He just wants boys. Another one is apparently commissioning babies from models and, glamour figures. He wants daughters whom he can marry off to Elon Musk's sons. I mean, it is quite extraordinary. And as a view of, human future, as envisioned by the tech bros, I think it's pretty bleak, honestly.
It's also fascinating, Isabel, from the perspective that on the one hand, there is a certain amount of Chinese nationalism, optimism, belief in the country, but also still this fascination with the United States.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole point about, and this is all done by mail order. There's no I don't think they actually meet the mothers. It's quite extraordinary. This horrible combination of technology and apparent kind of lack of human feeling. And yes, they want them to be American citizens. Meanwhile, back home, the party is in a panic because nobody wants to have children. So the other thing that happened in 2025 is that the Chinese population shrank for the second year running. It was overtaken, you may recall, last year by India in terms of size of population. And, after 30 years of a one-child policy, the party is now desperately pleading with young couples, ringing them up and saying, why aren't you pregnant yet? It's just an extraordinary reversal. So I don't know that the highest echelon of the party would be absolutely thrilled to know that their richest citizens and their tech entrepreneurs were actually fathering babies in America.
Well, that's what I was wondering. Is that the next step in this? Are you going to have the Chinese party sort of calling up the billionaires and saying, hey, what's happening here? Do this back at home.
Or maybe it's a tech billionaire's idea of a kind of opening a third front in the United States. Who knows?
Is that a sign that despite all of the debates, the trade wars, everything we're talking about, when it comes to technology, the US and China, two sides of the same coin?
They're pretty much neck and neck now. I mean, there's maybe a slight edge. You may recall, again, another fight this year was over NVIDIA chips, whether China would be allowed to buy them or not. And so they were banned from exporting NVIDIA chips to China. But then, the CEO of NVIDIA went and talked to Donald Trump and he reversed it, to the consternation, actually, of quite a lot of the security establishment, because it just speeds up the day when China is at a technological level or indeed surpasses the United States. And in some technologies, it may well have done so already. So that is the fierce competition. We'll see how that turns out.
Isabel Hilton, founder of China Dialogue, thank you very much for bringing us that story. You're listening to The Briefing on Monocle Radio. And And finally, on today's show, Lapland, best known as the home of Santa Claus, is undergoing a dramatic transformation. In just a few years, the number of direct international flights to the region has quadrupled, tourism revenues are booming, and visitor numbers are reaching record highs. Monocle's Petri Bertsov visited Rovaniemi to see how Lapland's biggest city is trying to balance economic success with long-term sustainability. Here's his report.
Nowhere is Lapland's tourism boom as palpable as at Santa Park, one of the many Santa Claus-themed attractions of Rovaniemi. The city, the biggest in Finnish Lapland, is on track to reach 2 million overnight stays, while across the wider region, that number has already passed 5 million. Tourism here is now worth 1.5 billion euros, with over €1 billion worth of investments announced for the years ahead. And the pace of change is accelerating. Just 3 years ago, Rovaniemi had direct flight connections to 11 destinations. Today, that number has risen to 46, a dramatic expansion that has opened the northernmost part of Finland to the world. That global access is transforming a place that not long ago relied on short visits and seasonal crowds.
We go back 45 years, in the early 80s. The whole Lapland tourism started with the day trips. So we had people to fly in here just for a day, 5, 6, 7 hours, and then they would fly back same evening. And that slowly transferred to 2-night stay, the 3-night stay, 1 week stay, even people buying their own condos and apartments and everything, and repeatedly arriving back to Lapland.
Ilkka Lankinen owns Santa Park and has watched Lapland's tourism evolve from the very start. He says what's changed the most isn't just the numbers, it's the mindset.
Well, we started to work together, and this is really the secret, and this is not really the secret, this is the formula behind the Rovaniemi's success. We started over 25 years ago to work together. We delivered free Santa, somebody gave free hotel room, somebody gave a free snowmobile experience, and the huskies and the reindeers. And this is how we started working. One company had the canoes, another one had the snowmobiles. And now in 25 years, everything has grown so a lot that everybody has the snowmobiles, everybody has pretty much the canoes, but we still do work together.
That collaboration has helped turn Lapland into one of Europe's fastest growing travel destinations. Rovaniemi alone is seeing a 15% year-on-year growth, with foreign visitors accounting for 95% of the arrivals. But those visitors don't all come at the same time.
Yeah, it depends on the season. Now we have had what we call the Spanish week. We have a lot of Spanish, we have a lot of Italians. Now we're getting the UK guests. Slowly towards the New Year and Christmas we're getting more Singaporeans, more Asians, because they have a big holiday then. So it keeps changing, and that's also the richness of this job.
The Christmas season remains Lapland's calling card, but it's also its biggest challenge. Winter dominates, while the long Arctic summer with its midnight sun is still underused.
And our summer is absolutely magnificent. There are 99% of the population of the world, even a bit more I would say, they never seen the midnight sun. The sun goes up July 6th and comes down July 7th. So it's a great phenomena, and this is what we want to develop, summer guests.
Spreading visitors across the year is one of the region's biggest sustainability goals. Accommodation capacity is already expanding, with new hotels and resorts planned well into 2030s. But where and how people stay is becoming a sensitive issue. Given how fast the tourism is growing, is the accommodation sector, hospitality sector, and then transportation, are they keeping up with this demand?
Well, we have now a bit difficult issues with especially with the Airbnb and these kind of platforms, because a lot of people are transforming their houses for travel and tourism use, which they're not designed for. And also this is affecting our doctors can't have apartment, our students can't have apartment. So that's kind of the biggest social issue at the moment. Otherwise, we will see future invests, of course, for the hotel-wise, but this also would mean that the summer would have to grow.
Local authorities and tourism businesses are now grappling with familiar questions seen in cities much further south: housing pressure, infrastructure strain, and the risk of over-tourism. But Lapland's leaders insist growth can still be managed, if it is planned carefully. What happens next will determine whether Lapland becomes a year-round model for sustainable tourism or another cautionary tale of success moving too fast. For Monocle Radio in Rovaniemi, I'm Petri Burtsov.
Petri Burtsov, thank you very much. You can hear part 1 of Petri's report, an interview with Santa Claus himself, on this morning's edition of The Globalist. That's all the time we have, though, for this edition of The Briefing. It was produced by Hassan Anderson, our researcher was Desiree Bandley, and our studio manager was Steph Chungu. The Briefing is back tomorrow for a special edition at the same time. I'm Chris Cermak. Have a great holiday, everyone. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.